Justin, would you please pledge allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, then the first order of business is to adopt tonight's agenda. And we have an addition to the agenda in the action items, number 7B. Consider approving securing our future grant application. And that's something that the board has to approve. And so they wanted to get it in, so we need to do that tonight. So. We should all have a agenda here that's changed.
I'll make a motion we adopt the agenda as amended.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we adopt tonight's agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay, the first presentation we have tonight is ICCU.
Good evening. I'm going to stand right over here. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I just want to make sure I'm looking at it. If I may, I'm going to use this little, a mock lectern here, if that's okay. Good evening, everyone. Chairman Parks, Superintendent Kirkland, staff, as well as fellow board members and guests. Thank you for allowing me to come and present tonight. My name is Jenny Ford. I am a Business Relationship Officer for Idaho Central Credit Union, and I'm here to discuss how we can support you in your organization with your operating account. So what you have in front of you is a proposal that we put together. I've included a table of contents, introductory letter, general information about ICCU, the difference between a credit union and a bank. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that tonight. Really what I want us to go over is the actual proposal and the funds that we would save you. So if you could turn to this page, it's the only Excel document. It's about 6 pages in. And what I want to go over are each of the specific opportunities and structures that we've offered you tonight. I'm not going to monopolize a ton of your time this evening. We'll have a few minutes for questions at the end. But really what I want to make you all aware of is opportunities that we can help you to save money as well as efficiencies. So, the upper left graph where it says current structure, that reflects your current financial institution. We reviewed transactions from June to August with the help of your superintendent as well as Kendall providing us this information. And it includes your balances, your interest, as well as your deposit amounts for the organization. Based off of these, there is currently no earnings credit and limited interest accruing for the school district. For instance, there's a 1% interest rate on your KHS and JES accounts, which currently means you're earning about $90 in interest every year. However, you have an estimated net loss of almost $736. The right column is what the proposed structure is, one option that ICCU would like to present to you. So specifically, that's an apples to apples comparison for what we're looking at. We're recommending that the school district gets set up in a business sweep account, which would receive an earnings credit to offset any fees. So what the fees would look like traditionally would include some of the treasury products that we've talked to Kendall about to help make not only the staff member's job, but her job significantly easier. And then we would put your KHS and JES accounts into a business money market checking. So your total estimated earnings would be $4,157.64. The large figure in the middle for the difference adds in what your with your current financial institution with Wells Fargo. That's the full difference that we would help support you with in earning more funds. And then the two other options to talk through, we're going to just go through this at a pretty high level. The proposed structure with additional funds includes the opportunities that I provided in the upper section. However, we're adding a 12-month promo CD to that. So currently our 12-month business CD is, our promo rate is 5.3%. So something that we discussed with your team was considering taking some funds from the LGIP bucket and putting that into a 12-month promo. One of the benefits is the structure of the school district is that you're set up as a municipality, and currently ICCU offers those organizations a one-time free withdrawal, through the year. So for instance, say you needed access, and we're proposing $1 million to be put in that CD, but that's flexible. That's a decision that you all can make. However, if for some reason, through that 12-month period, you needed access to those funds, you had a capital project, an emergency, anything like that, you could withdraw a portion or even the entirety of those funds and you would not have a penalty, which is traditional with other organizations. Lastly, on the lower right portion, the proposed structure with insurance CD. So if the board is concerned about insurance thresholds, just so you're all aware, ICCU is insured through the NCUA, which is the National Credit Union Administration, which is a U.S. government agency, which is very similar to FDIC. So traditional banks are insured through FDIC. So not to get into the minutia of that, but if you were wanting to have those, if you were wanting to consider a CD with insured funds, then we can do any dollar amount. We listed $1 million in here, however, we can insure up to any threshold. And how that would work is we would go through our Federal Home Loan Bank. We would receive a Federal Home Loan Bank letter, which means that if we defaulted for any reason, then they would pay you. But what I want to stress tonight is that ICCU is a safe and sound institution. Just for your benefit, 1 in 4 Idahoans are ICCU members. We have very conservative investments, and the structure of our credit union is extremely safe. And I can go into more detail about that if you'd like. Finally, even a small change would make a big difference to the school district. So even if you did the apples to apples comparison, you would be keeping more money in the pocket of the district. With ICCU, you get a dedicated team. Not only myself as the boots on the ground representative, I cover our Moscow Lewiston as well as our White Pine Pierce location. But we also have a 7-person support team, a dedicated team on call via email, via phone, Monday through Saturday. We have sophisticated reporting options. I'm in the region often to check in. I'm able to collect signatures, meet with Kendall and the team if they have any questions. And I say that I'm in the region often because I have the privilege of having some bloodline and family in the Southwick area. And finally, my final comment, Superintendent Kirkland, as well as Kendall, wanted me to speak to sponsorship opportunities. ICCU is very involved in the communities that we serve and the markets that we serve. Personally, I take a lot of pride in the philanthropic philosophy that Idaho Central Credit Union has. Any proposal that you would like us to consider and look at, and those opportunities, we would like to see those. This would involve an external department outside of the business relationship department, just so you know. That would be our marketing team as well as our community development team. However, I'm happy to ask any questions specific to that final comment or any of the items listed in the proposal. So I know I went through that pretty fast, but I actually got to look at your agenda. I'm proud of all of you for how long you're going to have to be with each other tonight, going through lots of stuff. So I just wanted to make sure that I was taking good care of the time. So with that, I would open up the floor for any questions that you may have.
So like on deposits, what's your limit of just taking pictures and?
For remote, for mobile deposit.
Yeah.
So for our consumer members, we offer mobile deposit. However, for our business members, the solution that we're offering to Kendall and the team would be remote deposit capture. That's RDC for, yeah, so if you're familiar with that. But essentially, there is a monthly fee associated with that, but how we set up the account is that it would offset any fees, that monthly fees that were associated with it.
And so Kendall wouldn't have to physically take checks to the bank at all?
That's correct.
Well, that's a plus.
That's one of the main reasons. And if I may, there is a fee associated with the scanner. That is something that the school district would have to purchase themselves.
Well, there's a fee for Kendall driving the Lewiston.
100%. Mileage, wear and tear on the road, time. It's our most precious commodity, isn't it? So, but great question.
And the other question I have was, so the $1 million CD,
Mhm.
and it would be insured, the whole thing would be insured.
Correct. If we, depending on which direction we went into, I guess.
So in
it-
theory, it'd be more secure than the state, or just as secure as the state.
Yeah, I'm sure this LJP is MCUA insured as well. I don't know off the top of my head.
It's all basically the same.
Yeah.
And if I may, Chairman Parks, it would take a significant situation and circumstance for something to happen to your LGIP funds in all transparency and honesty.
I understand.
Yeah, so.
What's the state paying this now?
5.16
So about the
is the
same.
wash. Yeah.
Yeah, and even if we don't go in the direction for the lower sections, just moving in the direction of moving the account will save the school district funds. And you'll be able to talk to someone.
Keep our account at Wells Fargo as we transition, just to make sure we're catching all those transactions and ACHs. But my personal goal would be by January 1 to be completely switched.
Can we go through a few of those details in the banking transition as well? Well, I hope you all know as a board and also what you all do on a daily basis, teaching is the most honorable career. Serving on the board and supporting your schools, I think it's just such a gift to your community. So thank you so much for all that you do. And just before I depart, any other final questions or remarks?
Thanks for coming.
Of course.
We appreciate it.
Thank you. Absolutely. And as a group, if you come up with other questions, please pass them on to either Kendall or Steve, and they can email or call me, and we are a resource for you. So thank you so much. Yep. Oh, yeah. For others.
Make noise.
Yep. Is that my Karen Burrell?
All right, we're just waiting on Tim.
Yeah.
What?
Switch
Look at me now. Stop making so much noise. Yeah. So while we're waiting, when Tim gets on, what he sees on his end is this. We'll see him when he comes on, but he's gonna see that top, that 360 panorama. And then as you guys talk, if anybody has questions or anything, what'll happen is the camera automatically moves to that individual. Or if you make noise, one of the two.
be let in.
It does it?
Does it have to be?
Oh,
Has to be let in.
did you start the meeting?
No, you did.
No. You created the meeting
Yeah.
invite, right? Go jump into Meet and let him in, because I don't have rights to do that. Huh? I don't have ability.
Hi, Tim. There he is.
How's everyone doing tonight? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Tim.
Perfect.
Okay, I think we're ready for you, Tim.
Oh, okay. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you for giving me time to present on the audit tonight. My name is Tim Boyd with Quest CPAs. First off, before I start, does everybody have copies of the audit in front of them?
Yes. Yes, we do.
Oh, perfect. Just want to make sure I didn't go into too much detail when you can't even see it. So, all right, perfect. Well, just overall overview of the audit and how things went. They went really well this year. We appreciate Kendall's hard work getting everything and keeping everything well organized. She did a great job jumping into it partway through the year and without any official formal training on it, kind of learning on the go and figuring out what needed to be done, and appreciate her organization and hard work with the audit itself as well. So thank you, Kendall. And we appreciate you allowing us to perform the audit. As I mentioned, everything went well with the audit. Overall, financially, the school is in good shape. There was one internal control finding that we had this year, and I'll mention that a little bit more in just a little bit. But yeah, overall, everything was good. So this presentation follows the same kind of format we did last year. There are two primary reports I want to discuss that we furnished to the school as our deliverables, and then we'll talk a little bit about the finances as well after that, and then that'll pretty much be it. So first off, if you want to just go to page 1 of the audited financial statements. Page 1 is the independent auditor's report, and on this page is where we express our official audit opinion on the financial statements, on whether or not they are reliable. And the second to last paragraph there kind of talks about that. It talks about our opinion, which is what we call an unmodified opinion, meaning the financial statements are accurate. We believe they fairly represent the financial position of the school. And unmodified is the best opinion that the financial statements can get, so everything is in good shape. The report kind of continues on another couple of pages. It mostly just talks about our responsibilities as the auditor. It talks about management's responsibility in relation to the audit, and goes into a few more details that I won't really touch on at this point. But by all means, please look through it at your leisure. It's a pretty good read, I think. So welcome to do that. So that's the first report that we issue as the auditors. The second report is at the very end of the audited financial statements on page 44. Page 44 is the auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting, as well as compliance and other matters. What this report says is that as part of the audit, we look at the internal controls of the school. The report is very clear that that we were not engaged to audit the internal controls, and so we don't express an official audit opinion on them. It just says that we looked at them while we were planning the audit, and if there were issues, they would be noted here. As I mentioned earlier, this year there was one internal control issue we noted here, and you can see at the very bottom of this first page, on page 44, the final sentence there says we did identify a certain deficiency described in the accompanying schedule of findings and responses. And so if you turn 2 pages, 46, that gives a little bit more detail on what the finding was. It was predominantly related to an issue that has essentially been resolved at this point, but relating to last year's audit, specifically the adjusting journal entries that we gave, that they were not posted to the school's records in a timely manner, and a few other accounting entries that were not made again in a timely manner. So the gist of what this report says is that, it kind of goes through a lot of very specific items in terms of explaining the issue and why it's a problem and what management has done to resolve it. But essentially with Kendall coming in and one of the first things that she was working on, she gave me a call months ago, was getting those entries posted to books. And so this issue is essentially one that the school has already taken care of, but it's one that we still was a big enough issue that we wanted to mention it still for this year. So the finding will go away next year, but just wanted to make the board aware of what it is, where it's at, and what it means. That's really everything in this report that I want to go over. So those are the 2 primary reports that we issue again as the auditors. Before we jump into the finances, which are on page 10, if you want to head there, are there any questions on the reports that I've gone over? If there are none, we can. I'll also open up for questions at the end of my presentation as well. So if questions do come up, there will be more opportunity there. But on page 10, we'll move on. This is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances. So essentially, it's our income statement for the year. It breaks down how the school performed financially, broken down by major funds, and then a summary of all non-major funds. So in each column, we've got the major funds. At the top of the page, or toward the top of the page, we have all the revenues, all the money that came into the school. As you move down the page toward the middle section, that shows all the expenses broken down by iFarms, functions and programs, expense programs. And then finally, at the very bottom number, that gives us our ending fund balance. And the third number up from the bottom, the net change in fund balance, that's essentially our net income for the year. It's how the school performed in each of these major funds. And so that net income then pours into our overall carryover for the year. What do we have at the end of the year to carry forward for future years, for future expenses? So looking at the general fund, I'll just briefly go through each major fund and then we'll wrap things up there. But looking at the general fund, we have an ending fund balance of just over $1.6 million. And to give context, to that number and what it means for the school, we look at what we call the operating reserve, which essentially is just an average of the school's expenses for the year. So we just take it a monthly average, so we take it and divide it by 12 to give us approximately what our expenses are each month. So that gives us a little bit more useful information looking at the fund balance, so we can say how many months worth of expenses does this approximately cover. In this case, the number is 5.7 months, so just under 6 months worth of expenses, which is a great spot to be in. It dropped a little bit from last year. Last year, I believe we were around 6.5 months. So we did drop a little bit, but still in an excellent spot to be. The average that we see for school districts across the state, at least that we audit, is right around 3 months worth of expenses. And so we're well above that average. We're right where as auditors, we recommend anywhere from 3 to 5 months. And so we're kind of right there on the high end of that recommendation. So no issues with the general fund, no concerns there. The only thing is we just want to make sure that, we did have a net loss, as it were, a negative net change in fund balance for the year of $166,000. But there were also some big purchases in the year, so that was part of that. Anyway, so we just don't, the biggest thing that we look for is we don't want to see a trend of that fund balance being depleted to the point where we will run into cash flow issues. 1 year where there's a drop is not a big concern. So moving on, Child Nutrition Fund. This fund we expected to, and we saw across the state, many schools, this fund dropped with the federal funding dropping off, ending their free lunch for all program. And in this case, it's one of, I think, only 2 schools I've seen so far this year that actually had an increase in the fund still, that didn't have a loss position. Some lost over half their fund balance this year. It was pretty crazy. So good job, great work to the school in continuing to budget and stick to the budget in that fund and making sure that we don't spend more than the fund takes in. The Child Nutrition Fund, we don't necessarily look for it to be a major profit-seeking fund, but it is one that ideally will at least break even in the year. So having a profit, not a problem at all. That's a great spot. So good work in that fund as well. Moving on to the Bond Redemption and Interest Fund. This fund, essentially, the whole point of this fund is to record the taxes that are levied to make bond payments and then to also record those payments going out. Only thing to report on this fund is at the end, that ending fund balance of almost $300,000. It's more than enough to cover the next year's payments of principal and interest that are required. That's one of the things we look for, and we're in good shape there. So I believe the total expected to be paid next year is about $153,000. So as I said, plenty of fund balance in there. And then finally, our last column here, our other governmental funds. This is is a summary of all the other funds that the school has, all state, local, and federal funds. Their performance for the year is summarized in this final column. Nothing much to report there. All those funds are operating as they should. They're being accounted for properly, and there were no compliance issues with those funds. As I mentioned, one of the groups of funds that are summarized here are federal funds, and just kind of wanted to report in terms of the COVID-related federal funding that schools have received over the last couple years. The school has just over $300,000, about $310,000 left in ESSER and other COVID-related funding available to be spent. And then at that point, I have not heard of any other additional COVID funding. I think that ship has kind of sailed. So that's kind of one-time spending that the school has available still. Only other thing I was going to note, last year I talked about the internal service fund for the medical insurance pool, and mentioned that it might be worthwhile considering dissolving that and absorbing it into the general fund, which was done, and you can see those details if you're very interested, starting on page 13 and 14 of this report, 13, 14, and 15. But basically it just shows the money going out of that fund and into into the school, and then it goes into schools funds. But just commend that decision. That was the internal service fund was one that wasn't benefiting really anybody, and it was just sitting there. So we are all for simplifying and more transparency. So that was the last thing I was going to note. Are there any questions now after my long spiel on finances, or are you all just ready to have me stop talking?
I don't think there's any questions, Tim, so
Okay.
I think we're happy.
All right. Perfectly fine. No complaints there. If you do have any questions at any point, please do feel free to reach out to me. Kendall's got my information. Maybe everyone does, but email, phone, always welcome to try to reach me, and we'll be back to you with answers. So, otherwise, thank you very much again. I appreciate you allowing me to perform the audit and also to present on it tonight. Hope you all have a great evening and enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thanks, Tim. Thank
you.
Thanks.
Okay. We're at item 4, the action item, which is the approved consent agenda. Minutes of the August meeting, payment of the bills, certified personnel action, classified personnel action. So I'll let you guys look over the bills real quick.
The HVAC units for the school. The HVAC units.
No, it's still have HVAC at the schools. So we're right now actually completely replaced
About how much on the field house that we spent this fiscal year?
Last time I checked, we were sitting at about, in total, 685,000.
But just this physical year?
Oh, this fiscal year, right at like 350, because we're roughly split between last year and this year. And that was before countertops that Bromley Steel did, which I believe they're done, and those were in total, I'm gonna say right at $3,000, so about $353,000 for this year. For the whole 65.
Motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
It's your walk away.
Amy,
Sorry.
did you get it?
I heard, and I'll second that by Justin. Who first?
Justin first, I second it.
Okay, thank you.
Then moved and seconded, we approve tonight's consent agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. All right, patron input. They left?
A 911 call.
Oh, great. Bummer.
Oh.
Okay, so then we'll just go into the report. Kendall's first, financial report.
Listed below are our Wells Fargo account balances and LGIP balances. We did get our 1.4 August payment last month. It was nice to see. I attached our ESSER spreadsheets. I apologize, I printed it portrait instead of landscape, so it's very tiny, but if you have any questions, please let me know. I do want to, Tim touched on the audit last year. We had $310,000 remaining in ESSER funds. Since then, we've brought it down to $210,000 remaining with only $95,000 unallocated. So just so this gives a little bit better description of where we're at with ESSER funds. That's that. So let's see, I submitted our transportation reimbursement claim last week. We're projected to receive about $154,000 in transportation reimbursement and roughly $26,000 in bus depreciation. So that bus depreciation is great because it took care of a big chunk of our purchase for this bus that we just haven't gotten it yet, but we'll be getting hopefully soon. So, any questions?
Have you tried to make a projected, year-end projected fund balance for the general fund yet?
For this year?
I would like, that would help the board if
Okay.
we knew that.
Yeah.
So if you could make that, the way I look at it, you know, we're spending the $350,000. That's going to come out. That's an extra expense. So our fund balance is going to drop that much. And last year, and then even if I guess if we get the money to pay all the salaries with more money from the state, that will be a void. So in my thinking, our fund balance will be down $350,000 next year. So,
Well, and I apologize. So when you asked for like the field house expenses, when you said,
fiscal year.
okay, so I told you fiscal year 23, so 22, 23, we spent $350,000. This year we haven't hardly spent any money.
Okay.
So I apologize, that was a
Okay.
miscommunication on my end. Yeah, that was probably a red flag for you because we didn't budget anything for the field house for this year.
Okay.
We'll probably spend less than $25,000 on the field house this year.
Okay.
There was I wasn't aware that Rittinger hadn't installed any of the HVAC stuff, so that was an unexpected expense that came up on the field house. But we should definitely keep those expenses under $25,000 for this year. But yes, and I do, now that the audit is done, my goal is to have a better budget update provided to you at each board meeting, where we're at with fund balances, where we're going to project to be at the end, what percentage of each budget we've used for those accounts. I just haven't had the time or made the time yet to sit down and do that. So, but it is a goal, and yeah, it would be nice to project out where we're going to be at with our general fund balance rollover. So.
Okay, so I feel a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a miscommunication on my end.
All right, is there any other questions for Kendall? All right, Dan, Technology Director report.
All right, we had CompuNet out last week during fair. They completed, but still need to connect to the system, the gym, the weight room, and the locker rooms. So if you go out and look, all of the badge swipes are there. We just got to get them tied into the system and activated. So that's going on. Last month they did get the west and east on the outside now, so those are in. They're going to be out next week on site to get those connected and fired up, so that way we'll have all the doors done. Then we can start the Justin end of it with the keys. The next on-site work for them, they're splitting right now. They're working 2 projects at the same time. They're doing Orofino and they're doing ours. And so they're kind of alternating between, unfortunately Russell got to them first, so he has priority. But the next full week for them to be on site for work will be the week of October 9th. So at that time, we're going to take them up to the elementary and get all the doors done up there. And then we'll start working backwards on cameras at that point. So I tell them, hopefully you get in before snow flies, because it really is miserable to be out there trying to hang cameras when it's 20 degrees outside. So Power School. On Monday, the teachers have a professional development day, and the back office staff and Mr. Eggers, we're going to have a Power School trainer come out on site for 4 hours to help us. Basically, she's coming into whatever questions we have to front load her on how things go with operations, how everything's working, how we're feeling with the system. So we'll have that resource, which is going to be tremendous to have somebody, and then to have them show us, okay, this is how other districts are using this, so it's not as foreign of a process. We are prepping for the upcoming IC upload, which is coming in October, and with the move back to ADA, that has to be, the attendance portion has to be unbelievably accurate this year. And so you hope that you have everything set up correctly, and then we go pull the first set of data, and then it'll be an absolute mess, and then we'll get it cleaned up. But that's usually the way that it works on that. But we absolutely have to have that one spot on. So this coming year, our network equipment, which if you remember we purchased in I believe it's 17 that we purchased that. All of that stuff is end of life, end of service. So, and realistically, it should have been replaced this summer, but we got thrown in another project that took everything that we had. So, we will be replacing all of the wired and wireless equipment this coming year. With that being said, we're going to use, we haven't touched our E-rate Category 2 funds from the feds, and that's roughly about $50,000. So I'm in the process of trying to carve out time to get an RFP put out there to have it go out in October so it soaks, and then we can start that whole process with the feds, because I need to have all of that ready for right when school gets out in 24 that we replace everything. So that's going to be the big summer project, as if we need more projects like that. The other one that I happened to pull a appreciated device report today, and our elementary iPads were due to be replaced in 21 and in 22, and it's kind of one of those ones where they're working and they're still getting updates, so I'll let that sit for a while. Currently, only the 6th generation forward are still supported, but they're going to drop off as of next year. So I'm right now working with Apple to get a quote for the replacement of kindergarten, first, and SPED devices. So at some point, be looking for a high-ticket one to come across. We'll be able to purchase off the state contracts. I don't have to put it out to bid. But we've already got money allocated in our infrastructure funds to cover all of this stuff. So that's going to cover the network replacement, and then this and whatever else we can. So amongst that and all the other chaos that goes on with school getting back in, that's kind of where we're at. So, any questions? Okay, well, thank you.
All right, thank you. Dory's up next.
All right, looking at our enrollment, 135 students currently, and you can see the breakdown there. Our attendance average is 96.7%, and I also broke it down for you. We had a couple of out-of-school suspensions already. Preschool, I did have a couple of errors in there, my spelling there, so I have to apologize. guys, but we have, we're starting our before and after school program on Monday, the 26th. We started preschool on the 18th, and those are our numbers. We have a wildly important goal for school-wide, is 100% of our students will grow in math, fact, and reading fluency. And there's a date there. And also, our target is attendance, so we're trying to grow and increase our numbers from last year to this year. Our IRI results are, you'll see that, colorful red, yellow, and green. And this is our first one. So this is our results of our IRI. And remember, we want that red to be at 5% by the time May rolls around. Anyways. Oh, some grades we have some work to do. Any questions?
It should be May 20th, 2024.
Yeah, see, I'm terrible. I'm terrible tonight. Who's talking? To Denise when this week. Sorry. It's all bad.
Thank you, Dory.
Yes.
All right, Superintendent, Principal Report.
Okay, for the high school, our students of the month were selected by staff in the category of attitude, awesome attitude. Our junior high student was Elizabeth Heyer, and our high school student was Brandon Hertz. Discipline referrals, this was as of the time I sent this board packet, so it's actually increased since then. There's been a few more referrals, we have a couple suspensions, and we had one bus referral. Our attendance at the high school is at 92%, at the junior high it's at 95.2%, so the junior high's doing okay. High school is lower than what we would like to see. This is a topic that came up at our superintendent's meeting today. We had folks from around the state in attendance, and in general, attendance around the state is just plummeting, honestly. COVID was bad, and it was probably getting bad before COVID, and COVID has made it worse. And so we're just seeing, it just seems like the trend around the state, and probably bigger, is that attendance is down. And so, anyway, I mean, some of you parents got the letter that I sent just urging parents to keep their kids in school. Staff, we talked the other day, we met about you know, just doing everything we can as a staff and a school to keep kids in school, just to help with that, and also just to help our students, because being here we feel like is important. So anyway, that's where we are right now. In a perfect world, both the middle school and the high school would be at 95%. That would be a pretty good number for us. I guess we'll see how that goes. So let's see, under KHS athletics, we had a representative from Chaz Health come down, and we talked on the phone, and then we met in person, and they are willing to come down this spring and provide on-site physicals with their mobile unit, free of charge to all of our students that would like to do that. Because once we get to May, kids can do that for the following year, and so it's really kind of an awesome thing. And so we'll promote that. We'll talk with families and make sure that if families want to take advantage of that, we have everything we need in place for kids to be able to do that. I've talked with the PE teachers. We'll just pull them out of PE at that time, go into the unit one at a time for the physical, and get those done going into summer. The other thing here under athletics is we do still plan to move up in classification next year based on student enrollment in grades 9 through 12, and regardless of how the IHSA vote would have went, we would have moved up anyway. So the fact that the numbers and the classifications changed didn't necessarily impact us. This will put us in 2A is what it'll put us in next year, because they'll now go from 1 to 6, and so we'll be in 2A. And I listed off the schools there that will be included in our league.
So you won't be doing one out-of-towners, overnighters?
Shouldn't have to. You know, one of the nice things about that upper league is that all of those schools are league games, and so that'll almost fill the schedule. And it'll just make our lives a lot easier. Mrs. Hadley in business technology received the CTE grant that she applied for, the Leading Idaho 2.0 grant. So she received about $31,000 worth of items in that grant. So that was exciting. With the greenhouse, I asked Mr. Ross to send this to me, so he wrote this as far as where we are right now. So construction is nearing completion on the main framing of the greenhouse. Advanced shop students are currently straightening and tensioning the frame. So our goal is to hopefully get that up real soon. Wish Medical is again scheduled to be out at the high school to provide sex ed. That's at no charge to the school. They are out of Moscow. They're the entity that provided that last year as well, and that went well. I've included the curriculum, which hasn't changed from last year, on the next page if you want to take a look at that. Under the district, we did complete that Narcan training that Kendall set up for us. Both JES and KHS staff went through that a little while ago. That was provided by our school nurse. We have a professional day Monday. Our chain beam, our professional trainer is going to be here doing the training in district for our staff. He's also scheduled to be back later in the year as well to provide ongoing coaching and more training as well. So that's worked out pretty well so far. The Ag Shop bathroom was scheduled to be done last week during the fair, but they bumped it back to the end of the month, so that is coming up soon. And they said that won't take them very long at all. I talked about attendance at the superintendent meeting today. One of the other things that we talked about is the challenges that we're all seeing with behaviors, student behaviors. Student behaviors continue to escalate, and it is a challenge for the schools. It is a challenge for a lot of teachers to teach because of the behaviors that we're seeing. One of the things that we have seen in the last 2 years in particular is students moving into the district that are special education and require a one-on-one aid that's written into their IEP that is the legal document. And so that's why you see, like on the consent agenda tonight, we had a couple of one-on-ones. One of those people we're actually not going to hire because that student ended up leaving after 1 day. But we're seeing a lot of that, and accommodating that in the special ed realm it's a huge challenge for us. It's a huge challenge for everybody, all the schools, but it's a huge challenge for us as well, and just behaviors in general. So, although with all of that said, I think we actually have started off pretty good this year, but just in the bigger picture, that just continues to escalate. So, the other thing I included at the very end, if you want to take a look, is just that general classification and alignment that was approved on the last page there, but I already talked about it, so I don't have anything else to add. Are there any questions?
It's a pretty tough year next year.
With
Football and basketball.
yeah, it will, but it's good. It's a good thing because it makes everything easier for us as far as scheduling. Like football has been a nightmare scheduling. This makes it a lot easier. It'll provide a consistent schedule for us that is local and hopefully some tough games, and I think it'll be a good thing overall. So, time will tell.
Trustee reports.
Well, we got a couple things, I guess.
Okay.
Don and I went to the ISBA meeting in Lewiston. We talked about, quite a bit about board members using the superintendent and the chairman if they have things that they need to bring forward. And I'm probably one that doesn't do that, so I'll try harder. And I talked to the business manager in Rockaway cul-de-sac, and I seem to be quite a talented person. And I seen a thing online last week about teachers taking vacation. I emailed Steve about it. And it's not a problem here, but apparently it must be a problem a little bit out there. So I was thinking, since Steve has said that, you know, they charged him the 40-day rate, would they miss it?
The daily rate?
Daily rate. Maybe we should have put it in the employee handbook. And, you know, I suppose we could do a policy on it, but, you know, that's, you know, there's got to be things that come up that we may want to absorb, like somebody getting sick or even extra day. So I think just putting it in the handbook, that would be the correct path.
I think there's
We talked about that.
a majority of our staff, the certified staff that use that sick bank leave, they actually contribute to that, so lots of people too.
Yeah, once they use the sick pay,
Yeah.
personal. Anyway. And then the third thing is I got a dog coach. I read dogs about girls going on and boys. 8 students are involved in cheer, I guess we call it cheer now. They would like to go on a movie night and all the ball games, every one of the ball games. And, you know, I said I would speak in their behalf. They're willing to go. They understand that their coaches has 4 restaurants, and so she's very busy. And Wendy has offered to be an assistant coach, minimum pay, just to be able to go with the girls to these games. And they probably have to, since everything is written out, we probably have to put a letter of understanding that at the end of the year, it has to be looked at again, because like Steve said, cheerleaders come and go. You know, we've had years when we dropped out from the end of the year. So a letter of understanding, if there's not a group, we can end it. There's no use us spending our time and effort. These young ladies don't let them in attend. So I've asked the board to approve her as an assistant coach, and the girls, whatever we need to do to get the girls to go on these ball games. They plan to attend them all. And they seem quite ambitious, Professor Plus, to keep the grades up.
So is it all sports or just football?
All sports.
All sports? Is it girls and boys sports that they'll be cheering at?
They're going to be busy.
They're going to be really busy.
They aren't doing volleyball.
We have girls doing volleyball. Yeah. No, we have girls that do cheer, but they're also on the volleyball team. Is that what you were asking?
No, do they cheer?
Oh, no.
They only cheer at the football.
Only for football.
Are they cheering for basketball in the fall? I don't know if they have a
We
tournament.
haven't had a cheer team for basketball in the last 2 years.
Probably longer now.
I should say since
Yeah,
I've
for
been here, at
sure.
least,
Correct, it's been longer
we haven't
now.
had that.
It's probably been
It's a tall tree for
They
them.
did just home games.
They just did home games.
But then that just faded away too. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, they want to be able to go to the out-of-town games, like Erie, Troy, you know, wherever. Anyway, I've gone to the board and you guys, I don't know if it needs a board vote, maybe for her, because she's got to do a background check.
What should we have to do a background check?
She's good for a
Application.
post.
We'd have to have enough students to see what the threshold is. Because we have to have so many students participate, like cross country, you have to find a minimum of 5 students to participate. And then is it for football, you have to have somebody to have an assistant coach. So what the same that is.
Well, that's why I thought I should understand that. Because the coach they have now can only go so many games. She's very busy. And so she would go to the games also to fill in, and she's not filling in.
What is it currently? You know, how many currently?
How many
Cheerleaders?
8, 6 or 8, I have to say, yeah.
So like if they went on away games, are they gonna have enough room on the bus?
That would be working a different considered.
The big bus.
If it's 2 buses going down to Middleton or, I know that if we can't have, parents or coaches drive them.
Yeah.
That's kind of common. Are you wanting that to be brought forth as an action item next month?
I don't know how you want to do it. You can,
I mean, by next month, football will be done, won't it?
Right now, it's in the deal, they do all home games and playoff games. That was
I would,
is that right, Steve?
I mean, I have a feeling, you know, if they want to do it, I don't see why we should stand in their way. But that has to be worked out. The board can't work that out. The administration has to work that out.
well, that's part of it she has here is, you know, the girls, the coaches, the athletic director, who are both the athletic director and coach have to do is both do it. So, and they'd all have to sit down and just work out how they're gonna do this.
Yeah, she put right here, all could finish the year and work out a better schedule for next year.
Yeah.
We'll all be local next year, so
Yep.
it'd be easier.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Lot easier.
And I'm for supporting. We just didn't have any, and didn't have any interest.
But
Well, and
We
it was
couldn't find anybody
it
to
was
do
also
it.
very inconsistent.
Yes.
They
we
go
had-
to
that
this
was-
home game, but not this home game, you know, what's.
And Randy's done a
the
great job with
Yeah.
the last few years.
Yeah,
anyway, they say they're gonna be in all the games, so, you know,
that,
it's a lot of work.
The only other thing I'd have to report on the meeting was, they gave us a tour of that new building down there, the vocational building at LC and I'm in Wilson High School, and it's really nice. They have, you know, they have a metal room and they have a room for carpentry, and they have a room for audio production and like, you know, games, broadcasting games and stuff. And so they have broadcasting facilities. You know, they got one room that has robotics. One room that's you know, for maintaining cars and it's a phenomenal building. And in theory, if we have a student who wants to go down there, we don't lose that money. We still get to keep that money. You know, the students still get to go down there. I mean, we lose them out of, you know, a student out of class, which, you know, if you don't have very many students, it's kind of hard on the classes when you lose something out. But yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity, and I don't understand it very well.
So when you come in here for an application. Okay.
Any other trustee reports? All right, let's go into the action items. First action item is to consider banking with the Idaho Credit Central Credit Union. Do you have anything to add, Kendrick? Steve? So what we heard?
I was impressed when we met with, Steve and I have met with them twice now, and then tonight, was very impressed with what they have to offer us. I will say, dealing with Wells Fargo, I haven't had a good experience once since I stepped into this position. It would be nice to deal, like she said, we're a phone call away. Every time I have to call Wells Fargo, it's a 1-800 number. I can never talk to a real person. We're there every time I've needed to email Jenny. She's emailed me right away. I would 100% recommend that we make this change, but it's up to you guys. And as far as the CD that she mentioned, 12-month promo, that versus the LGIP, I'm fine either way. It's what you guys want to decide as the board. I mean, either way, the money's sitting in a bank essentially, and we're collecting decent interest. So it doesn't matter to me either way.
Well, I think everybody's had that experience. I'm for it.
Because it would be such a mess to untangle those.
I'll make a motion to change banks to Idaho Central Credit Union.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we change our banking to the Idaho Central Credit Union. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, the next item is continuous improvement plan. So you can talk to that, Steve?
Sure, I attached that separate because it was easier to attach it as a separate document. But on there, those are just the goals for mostly the IRI and ISAT test, and then there's a couple other ones mixed in. And when Dory and I set those goals, we set those based on how the kids did last year, and so we set the goal higher than what we performed, but something that we think is attainable.
Basically, you have a goal for basically every class.
Any class that takes the IRI or takes the ISAT. Yeah, there's also in there, there's some college and career ready goals in there. Each one of those goals is a mandate. So we're mandated to have those goals in place for those specific areas. And so that template, that document we get from the State Board of Ed, and that's who we turn it into by August 1st every year. Yeah.
So when it comes, does it have your performance written on it already, or do you guys have to come up with that too?
So what we put in some of them, we put in last year's performance. And then, because this is a document that generally I will start in June, July, and then we finish it, maybe in August. So we have last year's numbers, and then at the same time we're looking at who do we have enrolled at the beginning of the school year in each class, and then set a new target goal for this year. And actually, because our class sizes are small, a few kids moving in can change where we set that goal, just because a couple kids make a big difference on a number. So, I'm not sure, does that answer what you're asking?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we report out, once we start getting those ISAT results and the IRI results, we start recording those on the document and then start looking at next year's numbers. And we look at, well, did we meet the goals? Where did we not meet the goals? So like a couple years ago when we really were looking at the high school math performance, where we were compared to our goals, that's when we really revamped everything. Got new curriculum teachers, started focusing more on performance on those tests. And so we do the same thing each year. This year the high school is going through accreditation review, so we'll do it even more so this year than we normally do, just because that accreditation review really looks at all of the data and analyzing it as far as where we can put more of our efforts or things to celebrate.
So I guess I'm hearing it is helpful to go through the plan and
Yeah,
make it.
it is. I mean, it's stuff that we would do anyway without this here. Like, we do a deeper dive than that. So we're looking, when we get results back, we're looking at the performance of every single kid compared to last year, compared to the year before, and what the trend line is for every single kid. So this is like surface type stuff that's required of us. But we're actually doing a lot deeper dive than that document. We're looking at every single kid, and we're looking at, well, this kid was this many points off. Can we get this kid up just 10 points to get him to proficient or her to proficient to increase our overall proficiency level? It's every single kid that we're looking at.
And so every single kid, like in the high school, do you have all the teachers review every child?
Yeah, those content teachers are getting the results for every kid. And yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that we're doing too, like, the practice tests that teachers are giving, with all of those things in mind. So when we take those practice tests, we're looking at, well, where did kids perform well? Where do they need more support? And so last year, and the elementary's been doing this, last year the high school spent a lot of time giving practice tests, and by going through that the first time, because there's a lot of different practice tests, by going through that, we have a better idea now where to spend most of our energy this year and really analyze where kids need extra support. And so teachers are going to give those practice tests, and they're going to be able to see on those where the kids performed well and where they didn't perform well. So the only outside thing to consider, for us to consider when we do all this, is the test the same every year? Because otherwise, and see what I actually learned today at our superintendent meeting is that last year's ISAT test, they gave the entire blue book on it, which ended up being more questions for the kids and extending the testing time. And so what we saw last year is that there was a lot more test fatigue and scores went down, especially with younger kids, because, and Superintendent Critchfield and some folks from the State Department were at our meeting today, and they said that wasn't our decision. Like, that was the previous administration. They made that decision, and that won't happen again this year. But our renewal for the ISAT system is up again after this year. Same with the IRI, iStation, that's up again this year too. So we'll see what the state does. If they were to go with a new vendor, new test, everything, well, the old data is not going to mean quite as much. So we'd start over. But the deputy superintendent, who was there today at our meeting, had just got back from a meeting of state departments, I think in Washington, and in a room, I think there was 38 states there. He asked, how many of you like the system you're using that meets the federal requirements? So that's why we have the ISAT test. And he said 2 states out of like 38 that liked what they were doing. And those 2 states, one of them was Massachusetts, and they have almost 800 people in their state department, so they just made it themselves. And the other one, I can't remember what it was. But, like, we don't have that ability in Idaho because we've only got like 100 and some people in the State Department. So, anyway, we'll see what they do. Not sure where I was. That's all I have to say.
Just a motion, just a motion.
So do we have a motion?
I'll motion to approve the contingency improvement goals as presented.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the 23-24 continuous improvement plan goal as presented. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Now we're down to approving the district financial audit.
Sound like we're pretty good?
Yeah.
Good job, you know?
Thanks.
Yeah. So I'll make a motion to approve the fiscal year 23 district financial audit.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the fiscal year 23 district financial audit. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried unanimously. And now we have the other action item, which is consider approving securing a teacher's grant application. Let's talk to that, Steve.
Sure, yeah. So we have, that grant application is for up to $20,000 for each building. You know, we looked at what 20,000 could get us and what we already have. At the elementary, we're looking at replacing some fencing that's near the building, which after going to my meeting today, it seems like that's kind of a popular one. Here at the high school, we're looking at improving visibility into the classrooms and quicker. You know, right now we have these blinds that, you know, they twist to try to open, and they sometimes come down and sometimes don't. And so we're looking at just making them all like that in order to, in the event of a lockdown, we can secure the room and block it off right away. And also just modernize the room and make it work better. Both of those we anticipate under 20,000.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway, the grant application requires board approval, that's why this one's here and others aren't.
I'll make a motion that we move to approve the Screamer future grant application.
Been moved and seconded that we approve our securing our future grant applications. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Item 8, action item policy. These were policies that we looked at last time.
Yep.
Unless somebody has any other comments or questions about it. Did you make a motion?
I'll motion to adopt policy 3345 and amend policy 3545 and delete policy 4410.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded that we adopt policy 3345, amend policy 3545, and delete policy 4410. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Need board member input for future items? Not, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded